already know that tonight we are going to make marijuana tell us the truth. Because the problem is, today in our society, there's a little bit of an issue with the story behind marijuana. How many guys have ever heard the story of Little Red Riding Hood? Right? What's the story? Someone tell me the story, the synopsis of Little Red Riding Hood. No one? So everyone's heard it, but no one knows the synopsis. Yeah. She goes to her grandma's house. Yep.
There was a wolf, and then
Uh-huh.
the wolf beat Little Red Riding Hood to her grandmother's house.
Right.
Grandma.
And disguise yourself as grandma. Yeah. And so what does Little Red Riding Hood do when she goes into the room and she sees a hairy grandma with giant teeth and big eyes and bad breath? She questions him. She goes, hey, why do you have giant teeth? Oh, you know, better to, I don't even know what she says about the tooth one, actually. I forget the story, but that's the last one. Oh, that's right. That's why I don't remember. Okay, so yeah, that's right. Okay, so she says like eyes first or something. Oh, the better to see you with. Voice, why do you have such a deep voice? The better to, you know, talk to you with, and all this stuff. At the end, why do you have such big teeth? The better to eat you with, and she eats her. And that's literally how the original Red Riding Hood ends. And it's a cautionary tale for kids not to just believe anyone and not to just believe anything they see. That's the point of the story. Fairy tales were written back in those days to do that, right? To kind of like scare kids into a morality that was good. Like basically don't talk to strangers, right? We're kind of taught that, and that's a good rule. But unfortunately, marijuana actually follows the very same pattern, the very same story, because you guys have all heard the story. You've heard the story that I'm not really that much of a drug. Like I'm more like a natural herb, and I'm harmless. You know, I come from a plant, and I help you relax, and I calm your nerves. I'm even medical, and I can be medicinal. I just help you, you know, have a good time, or I'm not even that addictive, and I'm safer than alcohol and cigarettes, so what's the big deal? Just have fun. You can enjoy marijuana. It's not a big deal. That's the story that has been told to your generation. That's the fairy tale that's been perpetuated. In fact, 60%, and this is one of the lower scores I found. There's actually some statistics that say it's higher. 60% of high schoolers think that it has no bad effects at all, that it's perfectly safe. In fact, more people think marijuana is safe than they do alcohol or cigarettes or any other substance. So it's becoming an issue, and this is why we have to talk about it tonight, because I want you guys to know the truth, I want you to be informed, and I want you to not believe a fairy tale, okay? So we're going to break it down. We're going to see who's telling the story. Is the story true? Is it just a fairy tale? What's the science? And what's the truth behind it, okay? I think those are important questions to answer about anything, right? When someone tells you about something, you want to know what the source is, if the source is reliable. If you have a friend who always makes up stuff, and they're like, hey, this, you know, amazing thing happened at my house the other day, you know, I was sitting in the backyard, and all of a sudden, like, a tornado came through my backyard, and you're like, dude, you make up stuff all the time. It's not a good source. You're going to question it, right? But if somebody reliable, if somebody you trust says something like that, you're like, oh my gosh, like if a meteorologist comes on the news and says, a tornado went through this person's backyard, you're going to believe that a little bit more than your friend who always makes up stuff. So it's important to know who's telling the story. It's also important to know the science behind it. Now, that means we have to look at research that actually studied it, took it apart, and found out the truth behind it with no motive of their own. That's really important. And then knowing what the truth is to help us make a decision about it or not about it, one way or the other. So let's start with who's telling the story. Who is telling this tale, right? Is it propaganda? You guys know what propaganda is? Propaganda is something that's perpetuated to get you to do something, right? To get you to buy into an ideal or an idea. That's what propaganda is. And so we're going to look at this and see, well, who's telling the story? Because whoever's telling the story kind of determines whether it's truth or propaganda, okay? In the Second World War, there was lots of propaganda for different sides of the war, depending on where you lived. If you lived in Europe or if you lived in America, you're going to see a very different propaganda campaign trying to convince you that one side was better than the other. Okay, so we're going to look at that. It's a big difference on who is telling the story, right? Is Nazi Germany telling the story, or is the American telling the story? There's a big difference in that conflict if you look back in history. So that's the same thing here. So who are you hearing the story from? Because how many of you guys have heard that story? Raise your hand if you heard the story that it's harmless, it's natural. You guys have pretty much all heard that story, right? Yeah. That it's not a big deal, that it's medical, that you can use it to help yourself with different issues and pains and all this stuff, right? Well, who's telling us this story? Most of the time, let's be honest, it's our friends, people we know, or acquaintances. It doesn't even have to be like a friend, someone at school, someone that you kind of know, a family member you see every now and then. And then there's the online presence, right? There's media, there's videos, you can go on YouTube and literally find 1,000 videos right now that tell you it's just fine if you wanted to. I'm not telling you to do that, but you could. And you'll feel really good about it. You know what? I've watched 1,000 videos on YouTube that says marijuana is fine. So I don't understand the big issue, right? Or maybe it's just culture in general. Our culture, as we're going to see, is just really pushing this idea that this is not an issue. It's totally fine. Everyone's doing this, and it's not going to be a big deal, right? Well, let me just tell you, none of those are good sources. They're okay. They can be if you test them, but none of them on their own is a good source. Your friend down the street doesn't necessarily know any more than you do when it comes to this topic, and yet sometimes they will speak as if they do. Culture as a whole, as we looked at truth, we shouldn't base our truth off our sociological culture, right? Off of a sociological ideal. That's not the best way to base our truth, because society believes all kinds of stupid things, right? Like ridiculous things if you really want to go down that trail. Internet and media, we all know that everything on the internet is true, right? Okay, good. Okay, no, not everything on the internet. Please agree with me that it's not true. Everything on the internet is not true. Just because it's on the internet does not make it reliable at all unless you dig deeper and find out who put it on the internet and who put it there. Because there's a lot of good information on there too. You got to know where the source is, okay? So who's telling the story? Well, unfortunately, when it comes to a topic like this, science a lot of times has to catch up, because somebody in a scientific community is not necessarily thinking, I need to go find out if this substance is an issue, until it becomes an issue. So what happens a lot of times with stuff like this, with other drugs, is that it becomes a cultural problem before science is like, wait, this is becoming a problem. Let's look and see what the truth is behind this, right? So unfortunately, you're going to find a lot more people that start the story are the people that are motivated and the people that are making money off of it, really. That's where it starts. When there's money involved, that's when it really takes the story and goes with it. Money really corrupts the truth a lot of times. Not always, but a lot of times money will corrupt the truth. And so we see that behind the media, behind the culture, what you'll find is you'll find businesses, and you'll find people who are way into the culture already and already are users, trying to make it feel okay for themselves to use. And you'll find politicians in politics, because tax revenue can be had in this business, in this industry. So there's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of skewed facts where people are skewing it to make their agenda work. Oh, I'm a pot seller, so I'm going to skew it to make it seem like it's a healthy thing so I can sell more. I am a politician. I want to get more tax dollars off this new fad that's really taken off and more people are smoking. So I'm going to say that it's a good thing to legalize it in our area, in our state, and I'm going to get tax dollars off of it. That's where the story is really coming from, that promotes that it's a fine thing and it's a healthy thing. Is from these politicians and from these businesses, right? They're putting out disinformation to make themselves and their cause better. And we have proof of that. In fact, you can see that they're spinning this story because, unfortunately, marijuana has become the largest cash crop in America. That's crazy. Like, more than milk, more than, what is this, in California, more than milk, grapes, and almonds combined. That's crazy. Part of it's because it's expensive, but part of it's because people are just buying the idea that it's not a big deal. That is totally fine, right? Marijuana production value of $35.8 billion exceeds the combined value of corn, which is $23.3 billion, and wheat, $7.5 billion, in the U.S. total, combined. And I found that statistic in multiple sources when I researched that. So what that tells us is that a lot of people are believing this lie. Because as we're going to see, it's not just like milk or almonds or something benign like that. Don't trust the narrative, because obviously someone's making a lot of money off this narrative to convince you that there's not a problem with it, right? So don't just trust a narrative. In fact, it's important to realize that we can't trust a narrative. Just because something is legalized, here, this is important, just because something is legalized, or culture or society or politics says it's okay, does not mean that is so. And we have literally hundreds and thousands of examples of that. It doesn't make it harmless. In fact, all drugs have some reason or benefit to them. All. Right? All drugs. Even the worst ones were created for a reason, for pain killing or for medical purposes, even though they are very damaging. It wouldn't be the first time, by the way, that this has happened in our society. I found these two ads. I found a lot more, but these are two I wanted to put up. This is heroin, cough syrup for children. Okay? Bottom is cocaine tooth drops for children. They say that cocaine and heroin was found in 90% of households around the 1920s, 1930s. Until they realized that people were getting hooked on it and couldn't get off of it, and it was causing damage. Once the damage was done, they pulled it from shelves, but it took years. And for years, companies like Bayer, who make aspirin today that we buy, promoted it as a natural, healthy way to take care of your cough or your teeth. Cocaine. Just, take some cocaine if you have a toothache. Like, literally this happened, guys. And this is not the only example. This is one of many. This is just the one I thought was the craziest, because you have these little kids hanging out just having a toothache and getting addicted to cocaine. It's crazy. And yet, no, I'm glad you're laughing, because that's how ridiculous it is. And we have the same narrative with marijuana. Now, I'm not going to say marijuana and cocaine are the same. They're very different, okay? But as you're going to see tonight, I think you can see in a lot of ways it's just as dangerous, okay? So, just because something is legal doesn't mean we should trust it. All right, so next section, what we're going to do is we're going to go through some facts, and there are a lot, and I cut out a lot, and hopefully I can get through most of these. But I want to break it down into 4 categories, okay? I want to break it down into the science behind the lungs, the heart, the brain, and our addictions. The lungs, the heart, the brain, and addictions, okay? That's what we're going to look at, because those are the main categories that that it kind of affects, okay? So I'm going to throw a lot of this is just going to be quotes from research I've done. Like, literally, that's all I have to do. It's not going to be a lot of exposition. So let's start with the lungs. Very important for breathing, right? The lungs. Everyone take a deep breath. Oh, yeah. Remember, every breath has been given by God, right? Everything that has breath praises the Lord. The lungs are very, very important. And first and foremost, I don't think it wouldn't be very not obvious to know that it makes existing conditions worse. Does anyone have asthma? Does anyone struggle with breathing? Anyone have any kind of respiratory issue? Okay, well, a lot of people in America do. And obviously, this is a pretty no-brainer, but it makes those problems much, much worse, okay? The next one, tar deposits. People say that marijuana does not deposit. Oh, it's way safer than cigarettes. Not true. Not even close to being true. In fact, it's 10 times more tar buildup can happen from marijuana than from cigarettes, okay? It's a huge issue. The quote says, marijuana smoked also deposits tar into the lungs. In fact, when equal amounts of marijuana and tobacco are smoked, marijuana deposits 4 times as much into the lungs. I said 10, I meant 4, sorry. This is because marijuana joints are unfiltered and draw more deep inhales than cigarettes. So you take deeper inhales of it, so it deposits 10 or 4 times. There's another statistic that's 10, I keep forgetting. 4 times as much tar into your lungs. There's kind of an idea if you see that picture. Of course, respiratory problems in general. It does cause respiratory problems. It's smoke. Bottom line is, anytime smoke goes in your body, you're going to cough, and it's going to have issues, okay? So just in general, I think, let me just tell you, as a life rule, don't inhale smoke unless it's a bonfire occasionally. Don't inhale smoke, okay? Don't make it a habit. Have you guys ever been hanging out, camping at a bonfire, and like 30 minutes in, you're like, ugh, can't even breathe, right? And yet, people go and voluntarily do it every day to put more into their lungs. Don't do it. Just smoke's not meant to be in your lungs, okay? So it causes respiratory problems in general. It also can cause a collapsed lung. There's a name for it. It's called, let me see if I can pronounce it, pneumothorax. Is that? It's a pneumothorax. Yeah, because PN is a pneumothorax, where the lung can actually collapse in on itself, and you don't want that. Okay, that's not good. It can cause that. It's been known to do that, and that's not a good thing. Lung cancer. People say, oh, marijuana doesn't cause cancer. That's not, lung infections. Thank you. Oh, that's the next one. Lung infections. We'll do that one first. Marijuana smokers can easily develop lung infections. What happens is mold can get in. Actually, they tested samples of marijuana, and most of them had mold involved. I mean, it's a leaf. It's a plant. It's going to have some mold. And what happens is it can get into your lung, and it can cause these little sacs to burst, and then you have short breath, and they start leaking, and it can cause some major allergies and pneumonia, even causing death. So you definitely don't want lung infections. A UC Davis doctor said dangerous bacteria and fungi can lurk in pot. How many of you guys want to ingest fungi? Yeah, that's not good. So lung infections, lung cancer. This is an interesting statistic. Marijuana smoke contains 450 unique chemicals, including 33 cancer-causing chemicals and carcinogens, similar to tobacco smoke. So they go, oh, tobacco smoke causes cancer. We all know that. Everyone knows that if you smoke, you get cancer. You've seen the commercial with the creepy lady with the hole in her neck, and we all know. Well, so no, marijuana is no better. In fact, it's actually worse in a lot of ways. It has 33 cancer-causing agents. So definitely cancer is an issue. All right, so that's the lungs. If you guys like breathing, you're better off not smoking anything, especially not marijuana. How many of you guys like your heart? I do. It's pretty important for life. Pumps blood, helps us play scatterball, and well, actually, symbolically, yes, it has our emotions, but literally pumps our blood. In fact, we learn from the Bible that the blood is the life of the flesh. Interesting that the Bible was scientific 2,000 years before science actually knew that, but the blood is the life of the flesh, says that in Deuteronomy. So the blood is very important. Now, it causes multiple issues with our heart. The first and most simple one is just dizziness and fainting. I think some pot smokers probably like this effect, and that's their own thing. But if you're dizzy and you faint, you can easily get hurt. You can easily fall over. And there's been many cases of people, when they're intoxicated with marijuana, falling and hitting their head and dying on a shower, on a corner, on a table, and easily dying from that. So the fact that you can faint and pass out is not a good thing. You don't want to do that. Heart attack. It can cause heart attack. In fact, it's known to raise your blood and heart rate to 20 to 100% shortly after smoking. Now, most people think, oh, when you smoke, it relaxes you and it calms you down. Mentally, yes, it makes your brain slow. But your heart, not so much. It actually makes your heart race. You ever heard of people getting paranoid when they do drugs or when they do? That's because it makes your heart race. It actually pumps your blood pressure up. And that can be a huge issue, and it can cause lasting effects, sometimes up to 3 hours of increased heart attack risk. In one study, it was estimated that marijuana users have a 8.4-fold, almost 5-time increase in the risk of heart attack in the first hour after smoking. So you want to increase your rate of heart attack or your likelihood of a heart attack 5 times. I don't think you want to do that. All right, let's see if I can pronounce this one also. Atrial fibrillation. That word fibrillation gets me every time. What? Yes. Fibrillation. And that's basically your heart beats wrong. Like instead of a normal, consistent beat, it's like a palpitation or a skipping a beat or an off beat. It can cause that to happen. So I have to admit, one of the things I was addicted to at one point was Monster energy drinks. When I was working in advertising years ago, I would drink like 2 a day. Or 3 a day sometimes, and I had to stop. And when I stopped, I got heart palpitations. Like my heart wouldn't beat regularly, and that really proved that I had to stop, and I haven't had them in years. But that was too much caffeine for my heart to handle, and it was not a fun feeling, let me tell you. Also, just in general, have you ever noticed or known people who smoke in general, anything, that their eyes can get red? Well, that's because it causes your heart, your blood vessels to expand, and it causes the blood pressure. This is proof right here that it raises your blood pressure, okay? So, I don't believe it raises your blood pressure. Well, there you go. I mean, the very fact that you get red eyes or bloodshot eyes proves that it enlarges and relaxes, and they become enlarged, and your blood vessels expand in your eyes, making your eyes look red. And nobody wants that look, right? Nobody wants to look like you got punched in the eye. All right, now the next section is actually, in my opinion, the scariest, okay? What is the one part of your body, probably more than any, the organ in your body, more than any organ, that you would want to protect? Your brain. You're smart. You use your brain. See, you know. The brain, okay? It's your computer, your nervous center. Without your brain, you're nothing, okay? I can live without my arm. I wouldn't want to. I can even live without a kidney. I wouldn't want to.
It'll be all right.
It'll be all right, but it wouldn't be great. But I cannot live without my brain, and neither can you. Sometimes I feel like I do that, but not really. This is where cannabis is definitely the most dangerous. What marijuana does is it hijacks your brain. THC is the main ingredient that does this. This is the chemical in marijuana that gets you, quote-unquote, high, right? This is called, there's a fancy name, tetrahydrocannabinoid. That is THC, and is more commonly known as THC. It's a similar chemical your brain naturally produces, but what it does is it replaces what your brain naturally produces and hijacks it and amps it up and disrupts the function of the chemicals in your brain. So it actually messes with your brain chemistry, basically, is what you could look at it as. It overwhelms the EC system in your brain, and it prevents the natural chemicals from doing their job properly, and it can throw the whole system off balance. The scariest part about this, as we're going to look in a minute, is it can have lasting effects and be permanent. So it doesn't just happen while you're smoking, oh, it just messes with your brain, and then when you're done, it goes away. It can have lasting effects. In fact, the more you do it, the more permanent it can become, and it can mess with your brain permanently, and you can have permanent damage. Okay? First of all, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to mess with your motor skills. Okay? You guys all played scatterball out there? Good motor skills? You have to have those, right? To walk, to move, to eat, to use your arms, to use your brain, to see, to go, to drive, to do whatever. Your motor skills are very important. But it can affect your perception, so what you see. It can affect your coordination, so how you walk, you can't walk straight. It can affect your motor skills and your reaction time. You're going to be a lot slower. There's a National Geographic documentary. I'm going to show you a couple clips from it. Was anyone here 2 years ago when I taught this? Anyone? Brian was? You guys? Okay, so you three have seen it, but these guys, you have, yes. So I'm going to show these clips again because I think they're really interesting. But in this first clip, what happens in this documentary is they follow these kids, and these kids walk out to some area behind their houses in the woods to smoke. And they follow them out there, and they have no problem getting out there. They walk straight out to the little area that they have. They smoke, and when they come back, it takes them twice as long to get home, and they have a major problem getting over what you're going to see is the tiniest little creek you've ever seen, okay? So, see if you've got volume. Yes, no? No volume? Oh, I have to turn this off, huh? Let me turn my mic off, Brian. Right.
We've all got to get across here.
We do.
THC also hijacks messages to the part of their brain that controls balance and coordination.
Just jump, Alex, jump. Just jump.
So even when they picture a smooth leap in their mind, the message just can't get through to their body.
Put one up and then spring off.
Eventually, the guys make it across. In one piece.
Sick. We did it.
Cannabis disrupts the flow of information between our brain and our body.
All right. So that's that little clip. Do you guys see how big that stream was? It was like not even as wide as this table. And they were like, oh, I can't, oh, and like one of them couldn't even, it just completely messes with your coordination and your motor skills, and you can't even get across the smallest thing. So it's especially dangerous. Of course, when would this be especially dangerous? Driving, absolutely. DUIs in general have gone way through the roof since the legalization of marijuana in different states. More and more deaths are being reported from people being high, not just alcohol-related accidents. It's becoming a huge issue. In fact, the AAA, American Auto Association, was found that the percentage of drivers who were high on pot during fatal accidents in Washington, which was one of the first states to legalize it, doubled in 1 year. Doubled. And that's sad. Twice as many car accidents and a lot of deaths just because the motor skills and people were driving while intoxicated with marijuana. It more than doubles the risk of anyone being in the accident if you're on it. In general, consequences, it supports the idea that there are cognitive and motor impairments associated with cannabis use. That's another study. Basically, there's more and more research coming out that it's worse and worse than we thought when it comes to our motor skills. Like, way worse than even most people realize. There's another part of our brain that is very important for us that we need in order to have joy in our lives. And if you don't have this is suppressed, you can have major depression. Mood change and depression is another major issue that pot can affect, right? It is shown that it can lead to major mood swings, to irritability. How many of you guys are irritable as it is? I'm irritable as it is. I don't need any help, okay? So she's like, I am. We don't need help being irritable as human beings in general. We all get irritable at times. But if you're in that all the time, it's only going to make it worse. And social anxiety. How many of you guys ever get social anxiety? Like, oh, I don't like being around people sometimes. I do that too. Some people say, oh, no, pot takes the edge off. It makes it better. It may for a moment. But it actually makes it worse in the long run. It's like alcohol. People think, oh, alcohol is liquid courage. It helps you talk to people. But then what happens is you become dependent. Next thing you know, you can't have a conversation without alcohol. And marijuana does the same thing. And it becomes more of a problem than a help. And that's what we see. Adverse effects found among 268 cannabis users. The most common adverse effect, were feelings of anxiety, paranoia, and depression. So anyone who tells you that marijuana makes you feel good, man, it's cool, it helps you, that is the opposite. In fact, the studies show that the worst problems they all had were depression, anxiety, and paranoia. Tiredness, low motivation, not wanting to do things. I'm already lazy. I don't need help being more lazy. I don't know about you. Now, the next one is a little more rare, but it's becoming more and more of a problem as it's being researched, but it can actually lead to delusions and paranoia and even schizophrenia. Okay? And anyone know what schizophrenia is? That can be part of it, but what it is the detachment from reality. You don't know the difference between reality and what's fake in your head. You can be walking down the street and start yelling at, have you ever walked by someone who's homeless and they suffer from schizophrenia, probably from drug use, probably from marijuana, part of it, and they're yelling at the street sign, and they're yelling at somebody who's not even there? You're like, what is that person yelling at? The air? They're experiencing schizophrenia. And it's been proven more and more that pot is causing more and more schizophrenia, especially in young people, especially in people under 25. And we're going to talk about why in a minute. But there's another clip. Is it still on? I never turned my mic back on, did I? I don't need to? Okay. So in this clip, we're going to see, this is a study, another study on this documentary where they had her smoke and they tested her reactions to different things and different questions to see if she was experiencing any kind of paranoia or any kind of schizophrenia during her high. So,
Having visions that you think others are not able to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. What sort of thing?
I feel like parallel to this situation, there's another situation going on, which is a dream.
So
She's experiencing a disconnection with reality.
have you been receiving any special messages from people or from the way things are arranged around you?
Yes.
What sort of special messages?
I feel like I've got some sort of communication going on, like a conversation with my boyfriend.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And when's your
Parallel to this one.
boyfriend? So some sort of telepathic type communication?
Yeah.
And how does that make you feel?
Special.
Special. Okay. So Catherine had what we would say was an actual psychotic reaction. So she thought she could communicate telepathically with her boyfriend, who was outside the lab, and she thought she was simultaneously experiencing.
Oh, I'm supposed to say two realities. It got cut off a little early. So she actually had a psychotic episode. Like actually, when someone says, oh, you're psycho, that's a real thing. You can be psychotic. You can have the wrong reality and believe something that's not really happening. She believed she was talking to her boyfriend while she was sitting there talking to the psychiatrist, having a conversation with her boyfriend. She literally believes that this happened. And what we're seeing is the more that you smoke, the more that people are involved in this, the more that happens, and then it starts to happen even when you're not. And it becomes a permanent part of your psyche and your brain. And a lot of times, that's why we see people who are yelling at street poles and lamps and stuff. And yeah, it's not being reported much, but this is the truth behind it. It happens. I think, what does it say on there? Oh, that's the next one. Yeah, let's see. Oh, impaired memory. That goes along with it. You lose memory loss. I mean, I don't need help losing my keys, okay? And I don't think anyone else does, but memory loss is a huge part of it as well. Just the fact that we can retain memories at all is an important skill, and it's something that we all need to practice and get better at. But memory impairment for marijuana occurs after THC alters how information is processed. So it's not only altering the chemistry in our brain, it's also altering how we get information into our brain. So you understand that? Like how you learn. You guys all learn differently, and you all have techniques, and you all have different abilities to learn. When you go to school, and some of you take notes, some of you are better listeners, and without taking notes, some of you are better at reading something to learn it, some of you are better at watching something to learn it. You all process information, but what THC does, no matter how you process it, is it alters how you process it, and it confuses that, and you're not able to process it as much anymore. In fact, it's going to relate to our next point, which is IQ loss. This is something that was debated for years. For years, people are like, no, that's just that's just one of those, things people say about marijuana that makes you stupid. It doesn't really. It just makes you dumb for a minute when you relax and have fun, and then you're back and you're just normal and it doesn't use any IQ. That is, in fact, not true. The more studies that have been done, because not a lot had been done before, but now they're starting to come out with a ton of studies that are saying it actually drops your IQ points. Your IQ is your intelligence level naturally, not your intelligence level from learning at school. That's your accumulative knowledge. Your IQ is how you solve problems. So no matter what age you are, you have a certain IQ. It has nothing to do with how much you know or don't know. It has to do with how you solve a problem and figure something out. Right? And they're seeing that our IQ, our literal ability to figure problems out, is actually dropping. What does this say? Results of a large, longitudinal study concluded in New Zealand, which found that the frequent and present marijuana use started in adolescence, mostly when you started as a kid, was associated with a loss of an average of 8 IQ points. That's a lot. I don't know if you know anything about IQ, but 1 point, it can be a big difference in IQ. 8 IQ points is huge. And then those who were healthy as teenagers and quit using as adults did not recover the lost IQ points. Once those IQ points are done, the permanent damage has been done to their brain. More and more research is saying it's a permanent thing. It's not something you gain back. You don't go, okay, I'll stop pot for a year and I'll get back to where I was. No, you lost it. You're now stupid forever. You're stupider than you were forever. More stupider. This other study, referencing a study on NPR, says, we found that people who began using marijuana in their teenage years and then continued to use marijuana for many years lost about 8, again, IQ points from childhood to adulthood. That means they were smarter when they were kids. That's sad. Hey, when you were 10 years old, you were smarter than when you're 20. That shouldn't happen. They lost IQ. That's sad. And in fact, there's a couple parts of that. One of it is nerve damage, that it can actually damage the nerves of how your brain works and fires in your brain. Smoking high-strength cannabis, or any, but mostly high-strength, obviously, may damage nerve fibers in your brain. Studies suggest that high levels of use may affect the brain's white matter, making communication between the right and left hemispheres less efficient. You need your right brain and your left brain to communicate. If one's not communicating with the other, you lose lots of skills that you need, and it's causing issues with that. It is also stunting development, as they say, in many teen brains. Okay? It can actually stunt development. There's a whole other section about shrinking brains that's still being studied. They actually say that it may shrink your brain, but that's a whole other study that's still ongoing, so I'm not going to get to that. But stunts developing teen brains. This is why I think it's so important that Ryan brings this up every year, and I bring this up whenever I can, is because it's the worst for anyone under 24. Because what happens, your brain is still growing before your early mid-20s. It's still developing. That's why junior hires are kind of worse than high schoolers. Their brain is less developed, okay? They're not here. We can make fun of them. So their brain's less developed. But as a teenager, your brain is still forming, okay? It's not done. And even when you're adult, it changes a little bit, but it's pretty much formed by the time you're in your mid-20s. But what happens is if you introduce something like THC and marijuana to that brain, it messes up its natural development. This is why you don't teach kids how to bodybuild, because it'll mess up their muscles and their bones as they're growing, right? You have to wait till they're more mature and fully grown before they can build muscle, or they'll mess up their growth. They can mess up their growth plates for life. Same thing with the brain. It impacts the adolescent brain, and it can damage it for life. Substantial, look at this word, substantial evidence. I mean, there's a lot, and I found a ton of articles on this, but this one kind of sums it up. Substantial evidence from animal research and the growing number of studies in humans indicate that marijuana exposure during development can cause long-term and permanent adverse changes to the brain. Long-term and permanent changes to your brain. So when people say pot's not harmless, they're so not aware of how bad it can be. It can literally change your brain forever. I found this other one. I don't think is it up there? Oh. This is actually a picture of this girl. She's permanently brain damaged and blind because she smoked one joint that had some synthetic stuff in it mixed in with the pot, and the THC and the synthetic combined caused her brain damage for life. And that's how she exists now for the rest of her life. And I do that to scare you on purpose, because that's the truth of it. We don't know even what's in half this stuff that's being sold out there. But even without the chemicals and which happened to her, it can still cause long-term damage, even if it's the most pure version of cannabis. Okay? So, That's the brain. I think that's probably the scariest one to me. I don't want anything that changes my brain and makes it stupider, more stupider. Now, addiction. Because this is, has anyone ever heard that pot's not addicting? Because I had a student come tell me that it wasn't to my face, and I said, I don't believe you. And guess what? Today, he's completely addicted, and he's admitted to me, and he's struggling really hard. 2 years ago, he sat in my office and says, no, it's not addicting. I could quit it any day. And I said, I wouldn't take that bet. And today, he's struggling hard, and I pray for him every day, but he's really struggling because he's totally addicted. So it is absolutely addicting. We're going to look at a couple things. Yes, look at this. 2.7 million, okay, million. And that's probably a low statistic, honestly. 2.7 million, because that's the ones that report it. There's lots that don't report it. So 2.7 million people who report it are addicted. Million people in the U.S. meet the clinical criteria for marijuana dependence. In fact, there's a name for it. Okay? THC stimulates brain cells to release dopamine, which creates a euphoric feeling to lead to psychological addiction. Similar to tobacco withdrawal, people trying to quit marijuana report irritability, sleeping difficulties, cravings, and anxiety. Okay? Just like I got addicted to energy drinks. It doesn't, you guys, the truth is you can get addicted to anything. Okay? You can get addicted to McDonald's hamburgers if you eat them every day. You just crave them, right? Even though they're really gross. In-N-Out would be more likely. But on top of the natural human tendency to be able to get addicted to things, you added something like marijuana that has the chemicals to hook you in even more, and it's that much harder to ever let it go. And it will control and hold on to you, and it'll be an issue in your life if that's what happens. So, on top of that, it is actually way more addictive for teenagers. I'm picking on you guys because you're teenagers because you need to know this. It is more addictive for you than adults. Those who start young, it says about 17% or 1 in 6 become completely addicted. And for those who use it daily, 25 to 50% is the number they're looking at that are addicted. So like every other person who uses it is going to get addicted to it. That is huge. Now, I don't know if you know any other drug statistics, but that's one of the bigger ones. Anything that's over 25% addiction rate is like dangerous, stay away, you're probably going to get addicted to it, and they warn you about it. The more you use, the more you're going to get addicted. This is another clip, and this guy, God bless him, I hope he's off of it, but he literally admits that he's addicted in the same sentence he says he's not addicted. So it's interesting, the denial we're going to see, but watch this.
And the more he uses, the more he needs to use to feel its pleasurable effects. So the big question is it addictive?
Went on vacation to Europe, and I didn't bring any with me, and I didn't get any there, and I literally, even though I tried to like drinking a bottle of wine a night, made no difference. Did not sleep a wink for 10 days. Insomnia, stomach, nauseous. But, so I guess technically, yes, I would say I am addicted to pot, but there are so many people on so much more worse things. I actually have to put this away or I will continue to smoke it. That could become a problem. Addiction.
But over in California, landscape designer Tom Stout has no illusions about his relationship with marijuana.
I was addicted. On a scale from 1 to 10, I was definitely a 10. Couldn't stop. I think it was when
So one guy's trying to convince himself he's not really addicted, even though he's saying it at the same time. The other guy's like, yeah, I totally was. He admits it. But the bottom line is, it is a very addictive, especially for teenagers. It's even worse, okay? And part of the problem today, one of the reasons that it's pretty addicting is it's actually today 4 times stronger than it's ever been. I don't know if you realize this, but the average THC, the thing that hooks you in marijuana, has 3 to 4% in the 90s and earlier, so 20 years ago, right? And now it's average 13. Some I saw were even as high as 20% THC levels in the marijuana that there's out there on the market today. So it's 4 times worse than it has ever been in the past. This means both addiction effects and the medical issues with your brain are going to be 4 times worse than they've ever been before. And so here's why that matters. Not only is it worse, but it also means that science hasn't really caught up yet because this is the new stuff that's out is new stuff, so it's still being researched. So the information is not really getting out there as much as it should. A lot of people don't realize that it's 4 times stronger. They think, oh, you know, my mom did it. She told me my grandpa did it, you know, back in the day, and he's fine, and it's not a big deal, or these people did it, or the hippies did it. You know, they had fun. The hippies, they're cool, and they're all businessmen now, and they're successful. Well, A, that's not necessarily true. I can tell you a lot of hippies in OB who aren't very successful if you go down to San Diego. But at the same time, no one really realizes that this is not the same stuff. It's 4 times worse in most cases. Not that it was ever good to begin with, but it's just that much stronger now. Okay, so the next section, the last section in the health department that we're going to look at is this idea, and this is where the narrative comes from. Is it medication? Is it used as medication? How many of you guys have heard that it's medical? Has anyone not heard that it's medical? Okay, we all hear the word medical marijuana. It's everywhere. It's like, you can get a medical marijuana card. Oh, it's medical marijuana. The policies are going to pass this because of medical. And this is why most states have started to legalize it, tax reasons and tax revenue. But, oh, it's medical. It's not that bad. Medical. Medicine's good, right? That's the idea. But there's a big difference. First of all, there's 2 things you need to realize. Marijuana has 2 major components in it, 2 major chemicals, okay? It has THC and CBD. They're both cannabinoid oil, elements, okay? And most medical versions of marijuana have a really high CBD, which has no real hallucinogenic effects. It's just a calming agent. It's just kind of like a NyQuil kind of a thing. It calms you. That's actually probably less invasive than NyQuil. THC is the one that gets you high and messes with your brain, is the bad chemical. So in medical marijuana, which is, by the way, not necessarily smoked, it's usually oil. Cannabinoid oil is usually what you see. It has a high rate of CBD, like 18 to 21%, and almost none, like 1% or lower, or sometimes 0 THC. You can get it with 0 THC. So it has none of the psychological effects, and you're not smoking it, so you're not messing with your lungs. It's an oil. It's like taking a natural plant extract oil. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do it, and I'm not saying it is a good medicine. It's still have to be determined, and there's still research that needs to be done. But when you hear medical marijuana, it's very different from recreational marijuana. That's the point. It's a totally different thing. Whereas recreational marijuana has 10 to 18%, as we just talked about, somewhere 13 usually, and a very low cannabinoid oil. In fact, sometimes 0.03 to 0%. Almost no CBD, the good part of the plant. So when they say medical marijuana, the good part of the plant is usually not even in the picture. Like 0.0 or 0.3%. And the bad part is up to 18 or 20%. That's usually the truth behind it. Even in these medicines, even with cannabinoid oils, there are side effects. That's what the Epilepsy Foundation talks about. You hear epilepsy is a good, if you have epilepsy, you can take marijuana and it really helps you. No, CBD oil is what they're talking about. They're not talking about smoking a joint. This is a totally different thing, okay? So, next question. Does it cure cancer? Have you ever heard anyone say, oh, it's good for cancer? Like it helps with cancer patients. I have family members who have told me that before. It's not a cure for cancer at all. The Cancer Society itself says, while studies so far have not shown the cannabinoid can be safe for treating cancer, they do not show that they have control to cure the disease. The ACS has not taken a position on legalizing marijuana for medical purposes. There's no proof that it does anything to help cancer at all. In fact, when people use it for cancer, it's just usually to help with symptoms of chemotherapy, not the cancer. It's to help the nausea with chemotherapy, because when you get chemotherapy, it makes you really sick, and sometimes it can calm you to have CBD oil. So usually that's what they're talking about. So it has nothing to do with curing cancer. That's just a flat lie that you hear sometimes. In fact, it's not approved at all by the American Drug Association, and even the use it has in CBD oils is very limited in its use. Marijuana fails to meet the 5 criteria for accepted drugs from the American Drug Association. Okay? It has no bearing. The drug, usually to meet the standards, the drug chemistry must be known and reproducible, meaning you can make it in a lab. Okay? There must be an adequate safety studies, enough safety studies done about it to make sure it's safe. There must be adequate, well-controlled studies proving efficiency, and the drug must be accepted by well-known, qualified experts, and scientific evidence must be widely available to the public. Those are the 5 criteria for a release of a drug by the FDA. Marijuana fails to meet every single one of these requirements to be a drug. There's not enough of any of this to actually be a drug. Now, some doctors still try to recommend it, but here's the reasons they do. Here's the parts they do. They only recommend it for 3 things. 1, nausea or vomiting from chemotherapy. So if you have cancer and you're experiencing chemotherapy, sometimes for some people, CBD oil can help them. The second one is to increase in appetite for patients who have AIDS. There's a problem with a lot of patients who have AIDS. They don't have an appetite, they don't eat enough, they get malnourished, and they can get really sick. Cannabis makes you have the munchies. So sometimes some doctors try that method, along with other methods, to see if it'll help them eat more food. And the third one is a possible treatment for some extreme seizures in epilepsy. That's it. That's the only use that has ever been tested to actually help. And even in those cases, we're talking about, again, CBD oil, not the THC, when we're talking about that. The problem is thinking in general that it's medicine, because that's the story that's being told, right? I actually added this next slide last minute because when I was driving up here, I drove through Ramona and saw that on the side of the road. Drive through medical marijuana, free medical cards here, Green Cross, must be good, right? This is the story that's being told. Right there, close to your home, just, it's healthy. This is the narrative that's being shared. It's not a big deal, it's healthy, it's fine. And we just went through a whole list, and I didn't even give you all of them, of the reasons it's actually not healthy. There is a real danger. Don't be a fool. Don't be fooled. Guys, don't mess with it, okay? Like, I don't care if every single one of your friends and family members is doing it. Don't do it. There's just not worth the risk. We looked at the health reasons. I think we covered those pretty well. But there's also moral reasons, right? For moral purposes, because what does something do when it controls your brain? What do? It's up there, kind of. You can kind of guess by the tagline. It makes you make bad decisions, right? When something is messing with your brain, you make bad decisions. Everyone knows that. When you get drunk, you make stupid decisions. Same thing with marijuana. If you get high, you're going to make stupid decisions. So morally, it's just not smart. Don't go down that road. But more importantly than that, as Truth Quest is made for, we want to look at the biblical reasons too, because there are biblical reasons to stay away from it. What does God think? That's the most important question you can ask. What does God think about any topic? Because it doesn't matter what man thinks. It only matters what God thinks. Because he's the one who knows all, he's the one who is all, and he's the one who judges all. So let's find out, what does God think about marijuana? Now, is marijuana in the Bible? No, it's not. Of course not. There's a lot of things that are not in the Bible, okay? Handguns are not in the Bible. But I think we can surmise, by principle, that we shouldn't shoot people because murder is wrong, right? So don't give me the excuse, because I've heard it, oh, it's not even in the Bible. Well, yeah, so are a billion other things that we know are not good for us, that we don't want to go down that road, okay? So, no, it's not in the Bible. But there are scriptures that we can glean from that relate directly to it in the Bible. For instance, 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant, I mean, be on it, man. Be paying attention, because your adversary, the devil, walks around like a roaring lion, seeking who he may devour. Listen, do you think Satan can use marijuana to take you out? Heck yeah. Are you kidding? If you're high and you're ready to make a stupid mistake, he's like, oh yeah, got him, man. All I got to do is tempt him right here, and they're already off their game. Their brain's messed up. They're going to fall and fail into this area, and they're going to have a bunch of issues to deal with now, and I got them in my trap. It's going to give the enemy a foothold. It's going to give not only Satan a foothold, it's going to give the culture and the world and the people around you a foothold to do things and to mess with your life and what you've been doing and to make bad decisions also. Ephesians 5:18, another good one. Do not be drunk with wine, but be filled with the Spirit. That is a good verse for any substance. Alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, tooth drops, and all those things, right? Do not be filled with wine. You can replace that word wine with any substance. That's the point of it. It's not just wine, okay? Alcohol, anything. Do not be filled with something as a substitute for the Holy Spirit. Here's the truth, guys. A lot of people take substances, alcohol, marijuana, drugs, whatever, because they're trying to fill something in their life that's missing. What God is saying is the Holy Spirit is there to fill that in the right way, in the healthy way, in the best way possible. The King of Kings and Lord of Lords have given you His Spirit to fill your life instead of a substance. So that's the alternative. That's what we should be doing. Here's some other things. we're told not to let any substance. We talked about that one. It's legal in most states if you're under 21, everywhere, right? But look at Romans 12, 1 through 2. Oh, actually, I didn't write that one down. I thought I did. Oh, never mind. Does anyone want to look it up? Romans 12, 1 through 2? Actually, let's do this. Do we have time to look up some verses? I don't know what my timing's at. I got 3 minutes. I started late, though. I started late. Okay. Yeah, I started like 5 minutes late. So anyone want to look up Romans 12, 1 through 2? Let's do this. Let's pull up some verses. Go for it, Brian.
I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Don't be destroying your mind by the transformation of a substance. Look, prove what is good. Prove the good things of God. Don't let a substance control your body. You are a temple of God. You are holy to God. Does anyone want to look up Proverbs 12:24? It can lead to laziness, a wasted life. Go for it. The lazy man will be what? Put the forced labor. Be made to work if he's lazy. Look, marijuana makes you lazy. Bottom line, it does. Okay, number 4 there. Colossians 3:23. It can rob your calling in life. Yeah. Nice and loud.
And whatever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of your inheritance, when you serve the Lord.
You serve the Lord. Do it unto the Lord and not to men. Look, it can literally, any substance can rob our calling to serve the Lord in the ways he wants to use us and serve us. Proverbs 25:28. You can lose your self-control and be open to moral compromise. What's that verse? Proverbs 25:28. Anyone? You guys are looking? You almost there? Nice and loud. I can't hear you. Go again.
Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control.
A person who lacks self-control. It's like breaking down your walls and being attacked by the enemy, right? I think that's supposed to be 1 Corinthians. I think I forgot the first. Corinthians, I'm going to go 1 Corinthians 6:19. Yeah, let's go with first. It might be second. It's first. Okay, 1 Corinthians 6:19. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyone got that? Go for it. Sorry, I forgot the first. Yeah. You are not your own. And it goes on to say, you're bought with a price, right? Therefore, therefore, honor God with your body. Honor God with your bodies. Look at, don't be putting anything in your body that you don't absolutely need to. Food, water, maybe aspirin occasionally, you know. You need, yeah, every now and then. Not Monster Energy drinks, Brian. You need to work on that, buddy. Just kidding. But don't put it, listen, you're the temple of God. You're very important, and your body has been made by God. Don't dishonor it. What about 1 Peter 4:7? The end of all things is near. Ooh, that's kind of intense. Now, whether the Lord returns tomorrow or not, we only live for a short time on this earth. So in retrospect, everything is near towards the end. We have to live as if it's our last day. In fact, we are not guaranteed one more day on this planet ever. You're not even guaranteed one more breath. Every breath you take is a gift from the Lord. So treat it that way. Don't treat your breath with taking in something that's going to harm you. I think that's an important one. What about 1 Peter 4, 3 through 5. That's close to the one we just did. Someone's got to be there. 5. Yeah, 3 through 5. Did I say 5? 3 through 5. Yeah, we've done enough of this stuff in our past lives. Look, before you were a Christian, if you were a crazy person that partied And if you weren't, good. But if you were, like, you got enough of that in the world. And if you didn't, talk to Brian or me or other people who have, and we'll tell you, you don't want to go down that road. It's enough. We did enough for the both of you. Okay, I did skip one. You're right. 1 Peter 5:8. Sorry, I did skip one. That was, yeah. You got it? Okay, go.
Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil prowls around.
Oh, that's why we did do it the first one. That's why I skipped. Okay, yes, again, the devil searches around like a pouring lion. Why let our guard down? I think we proved pretty well through the medical stuff we just looked at that it definitely puts your guard down. I mean, those kids couldn't even cross a tiny stream, okay? Physically, yes, but even mentally and spiritually, it puts your guard down. And, I mean, we could even go into the spiritual attack from Satan and his demons on drug use, and that's a whole other topic, but it does open you up to those kinds of things as well. What's the last one? Romans, one person get Romans 14, 1 through 20, that's a lot. I think, let's just do Matthew 18:6, yeah. Go for it. Okay, so whoever causes a little one to stumble, it's better than to have a stone hung around the neck and then thrown in the sea. It's really bad to cause other people to stumble. If you smoke marijuana, especially as a Christian, are you going to cause someone to stumble? Yep. Most likely, yes. And you know who it's probably going to be? Someone in your family. Well, yourselves, yeah. It's probably going to be someone in your family. Anyone have little brothers or sisters? Okay, yeah. Just for that reason alone, guard yourselves. Don't let them see you get involved in stuff like this, okay? It can also stumble your closest friends. And even people from the outside, they're a pretty good person, they're Christian, they're pretty moral, and they think it's fine, must be okay. And then that person becomes addicted and has an issue with it their whole life, and you're responsible for that. Jesus is very serious. He's like, it's better for you to just throw yourself in the ocean than to start stumbling people. Like, it's pretty brutal. That's one of the most brutal verses in the Bible. And it's not saying that if you ever have, that you should go do that right now, like just go drown yourself. That's not what I'm saying. The point is being like, you need to take this seriously. You guys, you are called to be spiritual warriors. And as Christians, especially in community and a culture today that doesn't understand what morality is and doesn't understand what truth is, which is what all this whole thing is about, you guys have a calling. I don't think you realize, and I wish I could go back and tell my teenage self this as a Christian, young Christian like you guys. I got saved when I was in junior high, and I wish I could tell my high school self, look, I had a calling. I didn't think I did. I thought I was just a high schooler just making my way through and going to youth group occasionally. I wish I would have gone every day. I wish I would have known that I had a calling to stand up for truth because so many people weren't. Here's the truth. No one in your culture is taking this seriously. No one. They all think it's not a big deal. I don't have to prove that to you. You guys know it. That Booth and Ramona proves it. It's ridiculous. You guys have the opportunity to say, no, that's not true. To be a light. And what if it just affects one person? Think of that. What if your choice to abstain from this amongst your peers and amongst your culture challenges one person to think about it and to stay away from it? Would it be worth it? I think it would. So if you've never smoked it and you have no plan, I congratulate you. That's good. But now you have a calling. You have a calling to stand with that and to share the truth. Now, I'm not saying you have to like break out a 10-point presentation like this and beat them over the head with it. I'm saying challenge people. Hey, that's not really true. I read some statistics. You should really look into that. Cause them to think about it. That's your job because no one else is doing that. Everyone else is like, it's fine, it's good, it's healthy, it's medicine. And you're like, no, it's not medicine. No. Look into that because I saw a lot of statistics that say it can cause psychosis and you can become detached from reality. I don't want that, and it messes with your brain and it hijacks your brain. You should look into that. You should Google THC effects on the brain. Challenge somebody who's getting involved in marijuana to Google THC effects on the brain, and if they're really honest with themselves, it will scare them. Just doing that can make a big difference. So that's my challenge to you guys tonight. First of all, I hope it scared you enough to never try it or to stop if you've ever have. And I hope more than that the Holy Spirit works in you to stand up for the truth and to help people realize the truth behind the lies that are being perpetuated with this particular issue. Amen? Lord, thank you for this time that we've had. I just pray that this has helped enlighten us. We thank you for all the gifts you do give us. Lord, help us to not abuse who you made us to be, but to glorify you in all the things we do, through our bodies, through our minds, through our actions. Lord, we just want to give you the glory and you the praise. So we give it to you tonight. In your name we pray. Amen. Thanks, guys.
Trash, please. Everybody go home, please. Right.